Well, welcome to Davos, the networking capital once a year for the global elite, where they put their minds together to try to resolve some of the world's most pressing issues. And one of them, which keeps coming back year after year, is the continuing war in Syria. But this year, there's a more urgent question. Talks are on the agenda, and the date, January the 25th, looms all too closely. Today, we heard from the US Secretary of State John Kerry and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying they do want the talks to take place on the 25th, Syria talks between the government and the opposition, although there's some talk of slippage. So will they go ahead? And why? And if they don't, why not? We're joined here by a man who's part of every twist and turn, the United Nations Syria envoy, Staffan de Mistura. Staffan de Mistura, will they take place on the 25th?
Well, I will be able to tell you that on the 24th, because meanwhile there is a lot of work to be done. You see, last time, when we had Geneva 2, we learned many lessons.
Which was a few years ago.
Exactly. And this time we have learned a lesson that if we want to have talks, they should not be talks about talks, and they should not be starting with a tense environment, but addressing the real issue, which is how to stop this conflict.
But the Russians and the Syrian government are now saying, to use their phrase, we don't want to talk to terrorists. They say they want to see the list and want to have a say on the opposition delegation. Can they?
Well, in theory and in practice, this should be a Syrian-led talks. That's the difference between Geneva 2, frankly, and these intra-Syrian talks. We are not inviting governments. We are asking Syrians to talk among themselves and agree among them.
The outside players are so involved, and in fact, without the push from the outside players, as you know, the talks may not take place at all.
That's why I'm relying on the Americans and the Russians who have been talking today, and others like the Saudis, the Turks, also to be in a way supporting, if they really want talks, if they really want a political process instead of a conflict. Now is the time to put aside too many discussions about who is attending, who is participating, and rather than saying, do we have an agenda? And you know, Liz, we do have an agenda.
An agreed agenda?
Yes, it is 2254, and let me tell you, the agenda is quite an interesting one and has a timetable. So let's not lose time
about the UN resolution 2254.
Indeed, and let me tell you, one is a new all-inclusive governance. That's quite a challenge.
A loaded term in Syria.
Yes, I know, but it is a serious one. It is in the Security Council, agreed by everyone, and in Vienna. Second, a new constitution, and you know very well, a new constitution, everything is on the table. And three, new elections, and not only parliamentarian elections, and all this within 18 months. This is what we want to discuss. And meanwhile, see some improvement for the people in Syria.
The regional players, do they want the talks? Saudi Arabia, Iran?
The regional players have not shown exactly their cards yet. But do they have an alternative to talks? Is this conflict of 5 years going to produce another 5 years, now that even the Russians are militarily involved? Is this something that can be sustained? Or is it rather important to they too realizing that there is a need for a political process, which will not be what they dream of either, but something that perhaps the Syrians dream of, an end of this conflict. And by the way, a common operational approach then, everyone against the real danger which is in the background, which is called Daesh.
You've talked to all sides. Do you really feel the Syrians want to go to the table to talk seriously?
I will tell you yes or no once I have them on the table. I will have proxy talks with them at the beginning.
So you still don't know?
Well, I do feel that they mean it, but I need to test it. I know one thing, the real Syrian people, not only politicians, want that. Everybody, and you must have seen it when you were yourself recently, they're just saying enough. And I think the opportunity for saying enough is now. For instance, if during the talks humanitarian access will increase, as we are asking and obtaining at the moment through convoys, but not enough, needs to be sustained. If a ceasefire takes place during the talks, well, then the Syrian people will start believing that we are serious about not talks about talks. And frankly, the UN has been organizing so many conferences in its history. We have learned, and I've got enough experience to know that, and the Secretary General feels very strongly, these talks need to be about something for the Syrians.
But to be absolutely clear, in the next few days, what has to happen for the talks to take place? The main obstacle?
The main obstacle is for those who have an influence on the people who are suggesting contradictory, additional, complementary lists to come to an understanding that we can have a formula, which I will use in the invitations, in order to make sure that all Syrians, but based also on the real weight on the ground, will be part of these discussions. Then on the other side, there will be the government, and then we will start talking business.
And the percentage of success sitting here right now, 75%, 90%, how confident are you?
You are asking the wrong person. I'm a chronically affected optimist. So I would tell you 60%, 65% we will start the talks.
But not on the 25th, a few days afterwards, in January.
Within January. There is no biblical or Quranic date there. There is simply an indication that within January we need to do it. And I'm confident that if the big players realize that there is no time for playing on lists, but actually playing on the real talks, we are ready for doing so.